Go. Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. I'm your host, Kristen Harcourt, and as always, we have an amazing guest. I can't wait for you to get to know her. Today, we are talking with Amanda Small, who is a people and culture executive who helps organizations scale without losing what matters, make what makes them human. With over a decade of experience in high growth tech and fintech, she partners with leaders to align culture, systems, and strategy during pivotal moments of change. As VP of People and Culture at Nest Wealth, she's helping grow the company into a global organization of over 800 employees and has led transformations across companies like Canada Helps, InPixon, Jibestream. She's also held global leadership roles across Canada, the US, and Europe. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thank you. What a nice introduction. Thank you, Kristen. I'm
Oh,
so happy to be here.
so excited for this conversation. And I think you just bring a wealth of knowledge and so much beautiful, diverse areas. And I think that's going to be actually a wonderful place to start because I
Yeah.
think your journey is unique and
Mhm.
it's wonderful. I love the uniqueness that got you into the work that you're doing that brought you into people and culture. So tell us a little bit more about your story, and you get to
Mhm.
start wherever you are. If we want to start at
Okay.
like Amanda, 3-year-old Amanda, you could start later
Oh
on,
no.
wherever you want.
Yeah, no, I won't start that early because that was many decades ago. But yeah, I think one of the most interesting things about kind of how I arrived here is that I started off really going down the art and creative path. So I was professionally trained as an artist, and I really like to share, particularly in companies now when we're talking with employees, with humans about what does the future look like. What I really like to coach for is that we're always building experience and skills that are transferable. And I think sometimes we get a little, I don't know, my generation for sure got pretty locked into, you go to school, you get a career path, you do this thing forever, and you really hone your craft. And so, yeah, I went all the way through a terminal degree in fine arts. I went to school for 10 years in fine arts, and I was a professor. I was, a studio assistant, and I landed kind of following graduate school, really actively pursuing an art career. My mother recently said to me, "You've always been really focused on success." And I thought, what? I'm so easygoing. And she said, no, I didn't say you weren't easygoing. I
Yes.
said that you've always been really focused on success. And I thought, honing my craft, this idea of honing your craft in the art world is tantamount to success. You go very deep into your practice. For me, because my focus was in installation art, I had to get good at project management essentially because I was doing large scale installations, both
Mhm.
permanent and temporary, all over the world. I
Mhm.
was, having to coordinate and procure things for, items for my installations. I had to manage a small staff who was helping me install work. And so some of those things in the moment I didn't realize were transferable skills. But later, fast forward 20 years, 15 years, they very much were. But I think a really pivotal turning point for me was working at a not-for-profit in Denmark. I went there as an emerging artist. I was very focused on my art career. I wanted to be in the biggest shows and in all the publications, and I wanted to have permanent, installations in places and museums and things like that. So very focused.
Yes.
And the executive director said to me at the end of my residency there, you're a strange mix of creative and uptight. I said, what? Again, sort of surprised, like uptight, focused on success. Who is this? I'm the free-spirited artist, like that's not true. But it is true. My girlfriends often refer to me as the type A hippie. So you can see a theme here where I do have kind of an open, very creative, very curious approach to pretty
Yeah.
much everything.
Yeah.
And I am a bit operational. I like to organize chaos. I think, kind of coming in and being able to very quickly see, oh, things are falling down in these areas. and how I can help is something that I think partly I have naturally, but also artists are very, very attuned. They're very aware
Mhm.
of aesthetics, of how things should be, right? Like when they come into a space, and I think that includes relationally, they very quickly can kind of see, that something's not right, and I can see how I could bring some, something better to that. I could improve that, or I could bring a new lens to that. And I don't think artists are often shared with about that. I don't think very many
Mhm.
people interact with artists or creatives on a day-to-day basis to sort of see like, oh, wow, they actually have this kind of innate skill or craft that they've honed through their practice to do that. But this particular ED saw that in me
Yeah.
and gave me a job. So essentially, I was a program manager for the institution and I managed a staff of six. I built new lines of revenue. I was recruiting. I was definitely in charge of accounts payable, procurement. I mean, you name it, anything having to do with operations, I was doing. And
Yeah.
the whole time being like, I have no idea how to do this. But I think part of the fun of it was being trusted. So we'll talk a bit about that, I'm sure. You know, people when they are trusted to do really well and also
Mhm.
trusted enough to make mistakes and learn from them actually are some of the greatest hires you'll ever make because you don't need to know, no one can know everything about
Mhm.
people and culture, HR, employment law, you name it. You can't know everything and you can't be an expert at everything. But I think if you are trusted and you're very curious and you're a person who, is kind of excited about what can I bring to the table to
Mhm.
improve this or make it better, those three things really just create an environment for success pretty often, I think. And so those were a great 4 years. And that really launched me into HR. But interestingly, I worked with so many, famous, well-known artists who, if I'm honest, they are visionary, they are
Mhm.
passionate, they can be
Mhm.
difficult
Yes.
because they're very, very, very focused on success for sure, but also particular.
Yeah.
Their vision is so clear in the mind. And I would say the CEOs and founders that I've worked with are very, very similar. The profile for me, it was not a hard leap to make at all. In fact, I was like, oh, I know you.
Yeah.
I've worked
Yeah.
with you for
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
in terms of a profile. So that was also just an interesting translation of kind of coming from a very different world. The not-for-profit art space is definitely its own thing. But, kind of coming into the tech space, I already knew a little bit who I was dealing
Mhm.
with. And
Mhm.
engineers, even themselves, I remember at Jibestream saying, oh, the engineers are like artists. They spend a ton of time honing their craft. They're very, very into their craft.
Yeah.
And they spend hours and hours researching new ways to do
Mhm.
whatever their thing is. If it's back and
Mhm.
front end or a specific coding
Mhm.
language, they want to know all the new innovative things coming. And that's very much how the artists were. They would be like, oh, there's this new technique coming out in XYZ, and
Yeah.
they're, deep researchers that way, kind of forever
Mhm.
learners that way. So again, I just
Mhm.
found that so much of that really translated over into where I find myself today.
I mean, I love when I first heard your story and you said that because it makes so much sense
Mhm.
in terms of
Yeah.
all of those transferable skills and
Yeah.
why you would bring. I mean, I get how some like people even describe you as a unicorn in that you bring this unique set with it that I would say is to any field is beautiful, right? Because you're bringing in both that side in terms of the creativity and innovation and ways to be able to look at it from that lens, but then also
Mhm.
being able to bring in the operational and being focused and action
Mhm.
oriented. But then also with so much of your background, you got that opportunity to embrace and be able to get exposures for all the different areas of the business, which I always say is such a huge,
Yeah.
important piece of eight people and culture, HR, is because you need to understand all the different elements of the business and be able to then help to make decisions and guide
Yeah.
and offer a light of guidance in those different directions. And I think I'm so glad people listening. I'm hoping whether you're the CEO, whether you're an HR leader, whether you're a people manager, you're hearing this and
Mhm.
you recognize that maybe sometimes you're keeping yourself in a box for yourself. That could be you when you're starting to think about what you want to do, or when you're thinking about hiring and bringing other people in, where you might be limiting yourself, thinking that
Mhm.
it has to be this particular linear line and it had to look like a specific experience and pathway that got that
Mhm.
person to there. I think it's such a disservice when
Mhm.
we limit ourselves in that way. And as I'm reflecting as you're even sharing this right now, Amanda, I can think about leaders who I have coached too, where, they started off, people manager or maybe finance and engineering, but then eventually ended up being the CEO, or
Yeah.
they moved completely to somewhere that was very technical. Next
Yeah.
thing they're doing marketing. It's like, but
Yeah.
they had also limited themselves in terms of who they believe themselves to be. And I love your example of engineers too, because I work with a lot of engineers and
Mhm.
linear thinkers. And then
Yeah.
we can be so quick to box them in just the linear thinker when they're so creative.
So creative.
And we're all
Yeah.
creative in different ways. I think that I
Right.
always try to remind people that some people just think, well, I'm not an artist. And there's
Oh,
this one version of what it means
yes.
to be creative.
As an art student, we used to always laugh because people would say to me, and when I would say, "Oh, I'm an artist, I'm a practicing professional artist."
Yes.
Oh my gosh, are you such a good drawer? And
Yes.
I'm the
Yes.
worst.
Yes.
I am not good in 2D at all.
Yes.
I
Yes.
never focus. It's again, I never honed my skills, my craft, or actually my interest in that. And
Hmm.
so I'll sketch stuff out for an installation, but I'd always laugh at me like, no, like,
Yes.
we do that. We think there's this, yeah, very specific path or trajectory or skills that are required to be, quote, good at something. And I think we forget just how big the curiosity piece and the ability to internalize and utilize curiosity as a learning tool, like
Yes.
self-learning and being really like, whoa, I think I could integrate this
Yes.
is such a skill. Just
Yes.
that alone is
Yes.
actually the skill more than do I know
Yes.
how to do marketing? It's like,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
So,
Because that curiosity can lead you in so many beautiful ways. Curiosity
yeah,
around, I mean, now there's so many different ways where you could just learn something and teach
yeah,
yourself very quickly that you don't understand. But then
right.
curiosity around understanding others, understanding those different personality, understanding their drivers and their
Yeah,
unique operating systems and their way of seeing the world. And then
yeah,
also curious where there might be times where this shows up so much with emotional intelligence too, right? Sometimes the curiosity is like, huh, what's
yeah.
going on with me right now? Why am I feeling so judgy, or why am I
Yeah.
feeling so impatient or frustrated, or wanting things to look
Triggered.
different, right? Why am I so
Yeah.
feeling so triggered or
Yeah.
activated is
Yeah.
something that shows up so often.
Mhm.
And I think that the more we can bring in that curiosity into everything is incredibly powerful. So when you start to think, because I think you also have a unique lens when you think about culture and what's possible with culture and being able to bring those different elements in it. I definitely want to talk about, you had alluded a little bit to the trust. I want to bring that trust piece in as well.
Mhm.
But when you start to just even think from a culture perspective, just before we start recording, we're even talking about meetings and when it makes sense to have meetings and when it's
Yeah.
not, doesn't make sense to have meetings. But let's take it right to the beginning and foundationally. And again, whether it's an HR leader or whether this is a people manager just wanting to be part of creating this really positive culture. What do
Mhm.
you think are those key elements that we
Mhm.
really need to be thinking about when we want to create what I like to describe as use the words human, but really a thriving, positive culture?
Yeah. Listen, I describe other people who know me will know I've used this description before, but I think it's really important. And for me, it really helps me visualize what I think culture is or does, let's say.
Yeah.
But culture is already always there. I don't build culture, I don't do culture. It's a collective agreement between the company, the leaders, and the employees. I mean, we're all in it. And whether it's intentional or unintentional, it's being kind of built and reinforced all the time. So when I think about that being this collective agreement between all of us, then I think we can start saying, what are the parts we want to intentionally grow or build or breathe air into?
Yeah.
And as we build those things intentionally,
Yeah.
I think we kind of start to push out some of the unintentional parts of our culture that are there. So my example would be, I think trust is really important. Part of trust, and I think what builds an excellent culture, always, I have never seen this fail, but I'm open to being challenged on it, is transparency. We miss the mark so much because as human beings, we're a bit protective,
Yeah.
A.
Yeah.
B, we often think our teams, our employees, even our leaders can't hold, they don't have the capacity to hold information that might be challenging, that change
Mhm.
that might be challenging. I mean, don't get me started on change management, you know. And the reason change management often fails, again, is I think transparency is missing and
Great.
communicating in a way that really has people, the first time you say anything, even something people like,
Yeah.
they get 15% of it, right?
Yeah.
Because our emotions are going, our energy is going, we're feeling one way or another. To your point, you just said, who knows? You might be reacting on the inside positively, negatively. You know, you might be resisting, you might be accepting. But what we know is the information isn't, the capacity isn't there yet to really hold what is it that we're actually talking about. And so I believe that communication and transparency are just like at the top, top, top. And that part of that is a practice. It's not we do an all hands.
Yeah.
It's not we always send out a Teams message or a Slack message.
Yeah.
It's when we are really supporting and engaging our managers? Are they clear enough? Have I spent enough time with them and our leaders at top level leaders, really spent time with them, helping to have them let the communication land? It has to be, it doesn't mean you agree.
Yeah.
It means that it's landed. It's really landed inside,
Yeah.
and all of your questions and your resistance and your noise has
Yeah.
quieted down, and you're like, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm like here with you. And then you can go out and talk to your team about it. And then what I think you hope is your employees, you also spend enough time that it's landed. They really understand it. And it's never once. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you something else, it's never an email.
Yeah.
It's that's not how it happens. And so I
No.
think one thing that really helps, you know, when you're, I would say, rebuilding or like re-engaging your culture
Yeah.
is start to build in skip down meetings where you're having leaders from
Mhm.
a level up meeting with
Mhm.
people, you
Mhm.
know, beneath their managers and really sharing what they're finding out
Yeah.
with managers, having those hard and fruitful and mentoring conversations.
Yeah.
Yes, I know we don't like to tell people when something has come up
Yeah.
that doesn't work, but the kindest, warmest, most genuine thing you can do is actually give people meaningful feedback about the way they work, the way they communicate, right? Like
Yeah.
meaningful feedback is just I guess my third piece is
Yeah.
like I think but it ties into communication, but I think we go so quickly across those
Mhm.
things like, well,
Mhm.
I showed the slide or
Right.
have,
Right.
I
Yeah.
sent the email
Yes.
and we never really know then has it landed. And one thing that happened at Nest that I think I still hear about in exit interviews and really appreciated is that
Yeah.
the CEO at that time, had an amazing exit, so good for him. But
Yeah.
at that time, he was very good at articulating his vision. Like you could put him in front of anyone, and it was so dynamic and so fun and so bright, and
Yeah.
just like, here's where we're going. But the employees often were like, they're taking it in, but they're like, whoa, 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 whoa,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah.
And he would say in every executive team meeting, it's like they didn't hear what, what I was saying. And I'm like, no, they absolutely heard 10%.
Yeah.
That's as much as they can let in. So
Yeah.
then my job was to really coach and mentor the managers and our executive
Mhm.
team to make sure that they were able to have conversations with
Mhm.
leaders that are going to really land. Because the executive team is going to evangelize as best they can, but
Yeah.
it's really your managers who are boots on the ground
Yeah.
leading your company
Yeah.
day to day, leading those employees is your managers. It's not your leadership team.
Yeah.
And so they have to really have the opportunity to understand it, the opportunity to disagree and commit, the
Yeah.
opportunity to say, like, I actually really don't think that's going to work, and to have an honest conversation about, yeah, it might not, but
Yeah.
like, we're here for you and we're going to fail together. But like, we've got to be clearly aligned in terms of what we're doing together. And it doesn't mean you believe it. It doesn't mean, and I can't, I wouldn't say your values do have to be at least
Yes.
somewhat
Yeah.
aligned.
Yeah.
But in terms of the amount of decisions that move
Yeah.
forward in a company that I'm like, I don't think I would do that.
Right.
You have to build some muscle around that and to be able to kind of own that and articulate that, be really genuine and transparent about that,
Yeah.
I think has built the greatest cultures, right? Because it's not rewards and recognition, although that does help. But it's not, it's not these things that we're like, oh, I think if we have an R&R program or pizza lunches or
Yeah. Yeah.
events, if we have more socials, I'm like, it's not, we're very simple and we're very genuine. We actually want to understand, where are we going? How are we going to get there? And are we going to
Hmm.
go together? Like, are we going to
Hmm.
be on the bus together?
Yeah.
And I sometimes use the analogy, in a great culture, you can say, you know what, we're all going to Mexico. And everyone's like,
Mhm.
we're going to Mexico. And then we all get on the bus and we're like, how do we actually get to
Yeah. Yeah.
Mexico from
Yeah.
here? And that's a created journey. That's
Right.
in real time created,
Yes.
usually quarter by quarter or year by
Yes.
year. Hopefully,
Yeah.
you have some goals.
Yeah.
But the journey isn't like, hey, we're driving on one highway
Right.
to Mexico together. We're gonna
Right.
meander, we're gonna veer, and that's a created, lived
Hmm.
journey that
Hmm.
we've got to be able to talk about and kind of get
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
Otherwise, people are going to be jumping off the bus. They're going to be
Yes.
getting off at pit stops and never getting back
Yes.
on. And it
Yes.
really can create, and I think it can create a lot of chaos, not allowing for the deepening of people's understanding and connection to what we're doing. And when yet that chaos, I call it the horses are restless. When you
Hmm.
walk in and you're like, ooh,
Hmm.
the horses are restless. Like, the barn it's vibrating,
Yeah.
and we need to give them something to ground into. And I
Yeah.
think we kind of, that can be a gap sometimes. And I think in the best cultures, we've really, really almost like slowed ourselves down to be a lot more intentional in those ways and give people a lot more information,
Yeah.
and not words, but understanding, like really helping them be part of the business, be part of the plan,
Yeah.
even if they're like, ugh, this seems crazy. We have to be like, yeah, it might be, but how do we give you legs kind of in that space and in that, ambiguity, just helping
Yeah.
them be
I
grounded.
mean, so many important things you said there. I think that I agree completely around the communication piece. Like, I think so often organizations forget that
Mhm,
they are taking it all in and processing it, and it requires different stages. I
mhm,
think I like what you were saying about the bus and it being co-created and it's constantly evolving, because I think what we know clearly now, and startup environments have always been like this, but now it's
yeah.
not just about startups. It's like all organizations now. Things are just moving so quickly. It's so
Moving so
fluid.
fast.
It's so you have to
Mhm.
be agile because and sometimes people will get upset with the leaders, like, well, you just
Yeah,
said this last week and you're not, now you're doing this week. And there can be a perception, which back in the day, it was that there was that they were indecisive. But that's
yeah,
quite often not what's happening right now. It's that the information is changing so quickly. And
yeah.
so then they need to pivot, but they
Pivot.
are communicating. And sometimes the individual getting communicated to are feeling like, well, how can that be? It was
Yeah.
just this over there. So I think it's also having some compassion around,
Mhm.
how quickly things are moving for employees that are hearing that, just because I hear that a lot from the employees, and sometimes a perception that the leader is holding things back or moving all
Yeah.
around. that is the case sometimes, but I also
Yeah.
acknowledge that's not always the case.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think what you're saying around the transparency is super critical. I love that you also said that HR doesn't own culture because I can't tell you how many times it's like, well, HR owns culture. I'm like, no,
100,
every single human and every single leader and
sure.
every single person
Yeah.
every day is
Yeah.
living and breathing that culture.
And
Um, right?
and we,
Yes,
especially if a CEO or an executive says to me, "Will you own culture?" I'm like, I think
right.
we,
Yes. Yes.
we.
Yes.
I certainly, if I'm running the company,
Yeah.
maybe I say I own it, but
Right.
kind of in that sense of like ultimate accountability for
Yeah.
how it's going.
Yes.
Yes, I think I
Yeah.
think HR can be, or people and culture can be a really pivotal player there. Like,
Yeah.
how is it going?
Yeah.
But it's not I don't do it,
No, in the day to day,
And
that's not.
we absolutely have to be, yeah, it has to be co-created. And I think we all have to be, especially at the executive level, aligned. Like, what
Yes.
does good look like? What
Yeah.
does it really look like?
Yeah.
And what matters to us?
Yeah.
Because for some people, I don't know why, but meeting hygiene doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And that's
Right.
okay.
Right.
But for others, really having time efficiency and, I think it comes back to values creation. When you're creating
Hmm.
values,
Hmm.
those values, nobody should ever have to remember them. They're lived.
Yes.
They're lived. Like, we don't,
Yeah.
if we're like, oh, what are our values? Oh, what was it?
Yeah.
Collaboration?
Yeah. Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
already
Yeah. Yeah.
lost. We've
Remind me
already
again, what
lost.
am I
Like,
supposed to be going out there and saying? Oh,
yeah, like
right. It's like
we've lost.
it's
Yeah, we've
ingrained.
already, yeah,
It's embedded. It's
yeah,
something that's embodied when it
yeah.
comes to, and people have heard me have many conversations on this podcast around values and what it looks like to
Mm,
live and breathe them, and how
mm,
it's not good when we talk about the values, and then especially from the top, but across the organization, when those behaviors associated with those
mm,
values are not being lived and breathed every day.
yeah.
Something that's showing up for me in this moment, Amanda, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, and
Mm,
because it's something that I see in a lot of organizations,
mhm,
and I see it all actually at all levels of leadership, in terms of, how do we best address this? And it's where the individuals in the organization at all levels are really under-resourced,
mhm,
to the point where they're bordering on burnout. And I see this even more with high performers who have a really big container
yeah.
and they're used to saying yes. They're good at multitasking and having lots of different things on the go. But
Mm,
eventually, this container starts to get to the point where it's
yeah,
overflowing.
yeah, yeah.
And then we have what's going on right now in a lot of organizations where there's downsizing happening. So not only was that person already under-resourced,
Yeah.
now they've actually lost people.
Mhm.
However, they are still being asked to deliver on the
Deliver.
same priorities, sometimes more. And
Mhm.
so, of course, I'm over here and wanting to say to the leader, do we see how there is a disconnect here?
Yeah,
The leader
yeah,
that's leading down, like, and then they're also getting frustrated, like, oh, people are not focused and they're getting stressed and they're not. It's like, well, maybe we
yeah.
need to get at the root what's happening here. And
Mhm,
so, and I see this in a lot of companies. I have to
mhm.
say, from a coaching perspective, this shows
Yeah,
up a lot.
yeah,
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Amanda.
yeah. I mean, as a person who has been through multiple acquisitions and often following that acquisition, it's like, oh, we don't need G&A. Ugh,
Yeah.
cut it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
your team gone and you'll be a
Yeah.
standalone until we
Yeah.
rebuild your team again. Or I'm not really sure. There's always this sort of cost cutting exercise, cost balancing exercise. And so that's happened to me myself. And also I have seen it. And I think where I really try to go in and support at the executive level is really understanding the high importance, high urgency items. I think we put everything in that bucket. We put it all in there. I can even sometimes now, I think it's my age. I don't know what has happened, but when I hear the notification on my Teams Go,
Yeah.
I have like a Pavlov's dog response, but it's a little bit stressy where I'm like, there's something in there. And I was never like that.
Yeah.
I went through all of my 30s and a good portion of my 40s not doing that. And something has changed where I will react. And so I was asking the team, I'm going to turn off my notifications. I am trying my best, to do what I need to do. Are you all feeling that? And they're all like, absolutely. So I think there's a couple things in there. When there's been a big change, either you've raised around or you've gone through an acquisition, or maybe you've downsized, you've lost revenue streams, you actually need to do a restructure or reduction in force. Okay, people are at high alert. Their nervous systems are high. And when we're reacting that way, when we're not sure, I think we ourselves put everything into the high urgency, high importance bucket. And
Yeah.
the greatest gift we can be as leaders, but
Hmm.
also give to our company and our employees is to be very clear on the three things we can get done that year. I don't actually think there's more than three.
Yeah.
People will give you seven,
Yeah.
10. I don't even know.
Yeah.
We aren't built for that. If we want to do something well, we actually have to be able to cut away very quickly
Yeah.
the things that are, yeah, we'd like to get them done. We will call them high importance
Yeah.
or important,
Yeah.
but are they the most important and the most urgent so that we win? And that conversation, woo, when I come in with that conversation,
Yeah.
everyone on the team will say, well, yes, everything's
Yeah.
super urgent, isn't it? And you just have to cut it away, cut it away, cut it away.
Yeah.
And I think there is lots of different modalities you can use to do that. But
Mhm.
one thing I have found that has been really helpful is to first find out from my executives, particularly the CEO,
Yeah.
like really tell me in 18 months, you can only get three things done, the
Yeah.
whole company.
Yeah.
What are they? Like, what are they really? What's keeping you
Mhm.
up at night? And
Mhm.
like, don't give me some CEO polished answer.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
know when you wake up at 3 a.m.,
Yeah.
what's right there for you?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's my family. I'm going through this thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why is it that you're worrying about? Well, actually, because the business isn't doing well and I've blah, blah, blah. There's stuff in there.
Yeah.
And so we have to get down to that root of like, what are we really, really got to get done? And then we have to be surgical
Yes.
about not letting stuff get in.
Yeah.
Yes, we want to do a million things. I love doing all the things in a year. I like getting to the end of the year and being like, what are we even going to do next year? So we knocked it all out. But that's just because ticking off the box, we know is a dopamine
Yeah.
hit. Ticking
Yeah.
off, getting a gold star is like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it's cultural. And so we have to be really authentic about, first of all, we aren't unproductive because we can't do everything.
Yeah.
We're actually human.
Yeah.
We're just literally human.
Yeah.
And then we need to define what does good look like? Tell me,
Mhm.
like, what is it to the CEO? And then we got to push that out into the
Mhm.
team. Revenue, what does good look like? We know these are the top three absolutely got to get done for this company to be successful. It might not even be in a year. Maybe it's a 2 or 3 year plan,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Tell me what you got to do that no matter come hell or high water, this happens. Okay. And I think with a good strategy and a good strategist at the table
Mhm.
who can also
Mhm.
be, the person to say no as much as they say yes is truly a gift and a skill. I think that's probably one of the best leadership skills is to be able to cut away the noise,
Yeah.
to take the risky bet of
Mhm.
I'm betting on these three things. And people don't want
Mhm.
to do that.
Mhm.
We leaders, I'm sure you've met them as well. They want to cast the net wide and fish with a net,
Mhm.
but there does come
Mhm.
a time when you got to fish with a pole and you got
Yeah.
to choose the pole based on the
Yeah.
fish you want to catch.
Yeah.
And that's it. I hold a lot of space for that because I think it is scary. I think it is like,
Yes.
am I going to really mess up this thing I've invested probably my entire life saving my investors' money?
Mhm.
You're putting it all on the line. And so I think leaders and founders need to really, we need to have a lot of space for that, like really helping them get down to what that is. If they're great at it and they know what that is, then I think where we have to coach the whole team around is like really making sure you don't throw everything into it has to get done
Yes.
because it really can't. Now, I think the other thing we don't do well, I myself am guilty of this, is
Yes.
really, really being able to define done.
Right.
Product people are very good at this. Well,
Right.
you know what? Even they have trouble.
Right.
But what is done? When we say it's done, you know how much in contracting, enterprise contracting, you get into this real shitstorm. I'm sorry if I swear. I don't know if I can say
You're
that.
allowed. Yeah.
But, where everyone's definition of done was a little bit different.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
client said done, we said done, product said done, and we're actually in three different places. And
Yes.
a good project manager will try to catch that, right? But that's really a skill as well that when we do it well, when we plan our year, or I like to even plan 2.5 years. I think 3 years is too long for
Yeah.
some reason, but
Yeah.
too much changes over that time. But
Yeah.
when we can really get good at saying, okay, in
Mhm.
2 years, this is it. Let's work like reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
We all have to know two things. What does good look like at the end? And what is done? When we're
Yes.
done, what does
Yeah.
done mean? So that no one can say, "Oh, but I thought when you said this would be done, it meant this." But
Yeah.
and I think being surgical about that is a great kindness. And you'll
Agreed.
hear me say this a lot. I actually
Yeah.
think that, we talk about some of these things like they're hard, but it's such a kindness. It's such a gift, the authenticity of being with people and allowing for us to like come together in a deep way. And it is hard. I
Yeah.
mean, we all fight for our perspectives and
Right.
like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a huge gift to a team if you're a founder or CEO who can do that. And I also think that's what I've loved most about being a people and culture person is like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, one of my values is how can we go together? Like, I want us all to go and win,
Yeah.
like together. We're not pulling each other, we're like rooting for each other. I was a cheerleader in high school. I always think about that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe it was like ingrained in me to just be like,
Yes.
I'm not even, I would root for both teams. I was just so
Yes.
excited. We got to
Yes.
go, we got to get there. And I think that's a really, it's a really critical part of being able to, it is cultural, but it's also, it's like building that deep vein of trust where we're like, I
Mhm.
understand exactly where you're going.
Mhm. Mhm.
I know when you don't get it done, I already know why, because I've like been with you on
Yes.
the bus, I've
Yes.
been,
You've
been
seen those
there.
behaviors. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm witnessing it and I understand and I'm
yes. Yes.
surprised and we're not hiding anything and like we're just
Yeah.
and when leaders act that way, it mirrors right out, it cascades right out into the organization. So when they're that way with each other, they're like that with their teams, their leaders, and then their managers are that way with their teams. And I think you really see, that cascading effect very quickly. Like it doesn't, and it's not a program. It's not,
Mhm.
sometimes people are like,
Mhm.
how would you deploy performance management? And I'm like, ugh, like that's the least of our worries. Excellent performance will happen. It does need to be tracked. I do believe it needs to be tracked. But excellent performance lives, just like culture lives, when we're absolutely practicing it at the highest level. Like we're
Mhm.
we're there. And we're
Mhm.
not like, are you accountable? We're actually committed to each other's accountabilities. Doesn't mean that we hold the bag for it,
Right.
but we're like committed to its greatness.
Yes.
And that I think the more we can practice how we want things to be at the very top with each other, I actually think, the culture, it works itself out for the most part. And then you get to decide, oh, maybe we keep hearing learning and development or career progression. That seems to be one that kind of always comes up as like,
Right.
it's a bit
Right.
lukewarm.
Yeah.
If we're being great about how we're getting stuff done together, if
Mhm.
we're like really caring about what happens to each other's
Mhm.
outcomes and to the business, like we're attuned and we're aware,
Mhm.
I think then it's easy to be like, you know what? We do know. We do know where our team has gaps, where our bench strength isn't there. Let's
Mhm.
get them trained up. Let's give them these
Yeah.
opportunities. We can see on our trip to Mexico we're going to have a little detour in Arizona. And we know
Right,
somebody would
right.
love to learn to golf
Yeah.
in Arizona. So let's have them golf. I'm just like making this up, but
Yes.
just kind of being a practitioner that way, I think is, yeah, probably one of my favorite parts about
Yeah.
people manager.
Yeah, I love that. So many rich things in what you just said there. Like, I think it's a reminder around, of course, we want to have these teams all working together. I do believe it starts at the top in terms of that
Yeah,
alignment. I also think that everyone can relate to what you just said about the being able to say, like, these are my top three priorities, like, of
yeah,
course, at the top, but then also within your day to day. And
yeah.
then being conscious of the dopamine hits, because sometimes people get the dopamine hits from the emails and addressing the emails in real time, but that's not actually what's the
The most
priority.
important
And then
thing.
that distracts. And
Yeah.
so there's been a lot of times where I've worked with leaders and we take audits,
Hmm.
look at what they're doing on a weekly, daily
Yeah.
basis. And
Yeah.
then they realize, oh my gosh, like,
I know.
look at how much percentage on a daily basis is in these other areas that are not actually actions that are
Most
aligned with my
important.
top priorities. But it requires discernment, it
Yeah.
requires courage, it requires
Yeah.
confidence, it requires saying no to things in service of
Yeah.
saying yes to the right things. And
Yeah.
that's building a muscle, right? I just
It
want to
is for
acknowledge
sure.
anybody who's listening, like, baby steps in the right direction. You
Mhm.
don't have to go from A to Z tomorrow. It's just
No.
like, okay, what does it look like to start to be able to be paying a little bit more attention to,
Hmm.
are you really focused on those top priorities? Because you might notice that some of those extra things that you're spending time on are not actually the right things to be spending time on and creating
Yeah.
stress.
And it's worth an honest conversation with your
Mhm.
upline. I
Yeah.
mean, if we can be a bit vulnerable to say, when you send me a Slack or a Teams message
Yeah.
about something that might be a priority for them that they're working on,
Yes.
I drop what I'm doing to address that. I want to check in with you about that. Like, here's what I have on my list as the
Yeah.
most important things. Can we connect on that? And there's also great tools that help
Yeah.
you, do have those kind of weekly check-ins on like the most important things. But
Exactly.
even if you are practicing at a company where you have no funding for tools, I mean, it does happen. You're like still in a
Yeah.
spreadsheet or a template or something.
Yeah.
It's really worth in your monthly or your, bi-monthly syncs just to say, like, just put it out there. Like, is this really, and I believe that most leaders, not all, but most will, one, really appreciate that authenticity. And
Mm-hmm.
also, it's an opportunity to manage up. I think
Mm-hmm.
our employees don't realize,
Mm-hmm.
and our
Huge.
managers don't
Yeah.
realize how much authenticity manages up, because it does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because you're
Huge.
doing anything to show, it's like you're not
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
being the kind of person that you want to be able to lead like. And that, I can't tell you how many leaders have told me, oh my gosh, myself included, I have had incredible team members who I just, from the get-go, I trusted. And when they would bring to me really hard things that I was doing,
Yeah.
I was being managed up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't, it's absolutely unintentional. It's like we're not even
Of course.
related to it. And
Yeah.
so that opportunity, I think, did you say discernment? Like
Mm-hmm.
being able to notice and have the ability to go in and say, I'm seeing something I'm doing kind of with you, or a way I'm being with you.
Yeah.
I want to check in on it, is really an incredible skill.
Huge. Huge.
Hmm.
I talk a lot about the managing up. It's a thing
Hmm.
I love around 360s because you'll see sometimes, oh wow, the different behaviors for how they're managing up, managing across, and managing
Yeah.
down, right? And
Mhm.
could be doing really one in one area, doing really well in one area, but having a gap in another. And absolutely. Amanda,
Yeah.
I knew that we could talk forever.
I know.
Um, but in interest
Yeah.
of wrapping up
Yeah.
today's session, I want to
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
you an opportunity to leave a final thought, whatever is most top of mind that you would like
Yeah.
to leave with the audience.
Oh, well, my very good friend in California, she's like a avid yogi practicer.
Yeah.
and I was sharing, she's also a leader in her company, and anyway, we talk a lot about HR stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about something with her, and she said, well, something my yogi said to all of us in a
Yeah.
class one time was be the fertilizer. And
Ah,
I thought it's so great.
yeah.
And so I would leave with everyone, be the fertilizer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What a beautiful invitation.
Yeah.
Where can people connect with you or learn more about you?
LinkedIn is probably the best.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
that's where most things are happening these days. But just thank you so much for the time having a chat. It's so lovely. You're so easy to chat with.
I loved this conversation, Amanda. Thanks so much for being here today and
My
sharing
pleasure.
all of your wealth of knowledge. And I'll have your link for people to be able to connect with you. And if you enjoyed this episode, for everybody listening, please share it with someone else that you think could benefit from it. And thank you so much for your reviews on Apple Podcast, Spotify. Helps the podcast to get in front of more leaders. And if you're looking to develop more confident, emotionally intelligent leaders in your organization, or maybe you're personally ready to grow as a leader, let's connect. I'd love to share more about my one on one coaching, transformational keynotes, and ongoing leadership training. Wherever you are tuning in the world today, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We are sending tons of love. Bye.
Bye.